boy, Nintendo really surprised us with this one, didn't they? They really just pulled the bed sheets over our heads and kicked us out back with one leg and said, here, enjoy the cold, assholes. Nintendo decided to, like, shadow drop this STARFOX Direct, and there's been a ton of buzz going around in circulation. Some questions have been answered. There's a lot more questions now, I think, than there were before, which I don't necessarily think is a good thing. But I think now there's a lot more questions of why and not if. And I think that's probably not what Nintendo wanted. But for those who aren't as informed, I'm going to be kind of going over the STARFOX Direct situation on the Switch 2 and voicing some of my thoughts and opinions on some of the choices that Nintendo made in regards to porting STARFOX over to the Switch 2. My name is Zach, and let's talk about Nintendo. A trend that I think we've seen a little bit since the Switch 2 dropped has been that Nintendo has been focusing a little bit more on their lesser-known IPs, which I don't necessarily think is a bad thing. Obviously, we had Donkey Kong Bonanza release around the time that the Switch 2 dropped, and that game, at least to me, is a gem. Splatoon Raiders is getting its own, like, standalone single-player experience, which people have been asking for a while, and I think that it's about time. And now we have STARFOX, who I don't think has ever gotten the love that I think he's truly deserved, even with his absolute disasters of games since Star Fox 64. And now that we're talking about Star Fox 64, this Star Fox Direct announced just that this will be yet another remake of Star Fox 64. This is something that I personally was hoping would not happen again. We had a Star Fox 64 remake on the DS. We had another one on the Wii U. I did not play the one on the Wii U. I didn't own a Wii U, and I don't expect you to blame me for not owning a Wii U because it sucked. So this is now the third rendition of it, and I will say, this rendition looks way better than the other renditions of Star Fox 64. This is definitely the best looking, and I'm not saying that in terms of like graphical fidelity. I mean that in terms of how fun the game looks. Now, I understand since you're remaking a game with a relatively simple concept, there's only so many things that you're going to be able to do to make it that much more exciting. But I think anything that you can do, Nintendo did with it. Now, granted, I haven't played it yet. I'm just going off of what we've seen from the Direct. With all of the new content, with the new bonus missions, with the multiplayer content, which I can already tell you I'm going to play a lot of. And I think it might take Metroid Prime 4's place as the best looking first-party game on the Switch 2. It looks unbelievable, and I cannot wait to get my hands on it. Also, I just realized I'm pointing a gun at you right now, and I don't think you even realized it. Give me all your money. If it makes anybody feel better, I saw this post, and I can't remember exactly what games it was referencing, but evidently there's a pretty historical pattern with Nintendo in regards to remakes reviving a series. Obviously, Star Fox needs a revival badly. And if this is the Star Fox 64 remake, if they can get the right team to get in there and do it, if this is the correct remake, then I think maybe after this game, we'll see something a little more bold and maybe hopefully an original story crafted around this new kind of Star Fox IP. Maybe they'll make a sequel to Star Fox 64 within this kind of engine that they've created. It's just a thought. But now, one thing I see that a lot of people are upset about, and honestly, I can understand it. I can honestly get behind it, is the character designs. This situation reminds me a little bit of the Sonic the Hedgehog movie situation, where they take something that looked really good in kind of this cartoon style, and it does not look quite as good in a kind of photorealistic style. I don't think this example is quite that bad, because that Sonic design was... that shit was freaky, dude. That shit was pretty rough. Like I said, I don't think this is as bad, but it's still a little bit off-putting, to say the very least. At the end of the day, these are kids' characters, or at least they are perceived as kids' characters. This thing looks like it might have come from a kid's nightmare, maybe, or a couple of kids' nightmares, or from the Nightmare on Elm Street. And most surprising, I don't think Nintendo has taken this kind of like photorealistic approach before with any of their characters, at least to my knowledge. I was digging, but I couldn't find one that looked quite this like lifelike, you know? And I don't know if it's the style for Nintendo, I'll be honest. The saving grace, I think, with these character designs is that 90% of this game visually is going to be taking place within the view of a starship. So it's not like you're going to be, if it was like a open world RPG, I could maybe see how people would be like, I'm going to be staring at this character all day. I can't do this. most of the game takes place within a ship. It's going to be cutscenes and whatnot that you're really going to be seeing these character designs, so... And this might not be something permanent that Nintendo has going forward. This could just be something that they kind of put together. The more that I think about it, I think that is the case, because we did just have the Galaxy movie come out, which had a really good-looking STARFOX in it. The cartoon style looked way more akin to, I think, what people expected. So, being that we won't see the characters most of the time and the gameplay isn't centered around the characters, like their visual appearance, then I think it's something that I can live with. A lot of people were kind of upset that they kept this a on-rails shooter, and I don't really like the term on-rails. It kind of has a negative stigma behind it. When somebody says on-rails, I think of like that Terminator game that you played at the arcade that everyone around you was always better at you than. Is that just me? Or I think a more apt description would be like a linear Ace Combat. If you guys have ever played Ace Combat, it's like a linear Ace Combat. It's not quite as on rails as maybe the term would suggest. Maybe the most positive piece of information out of all of this is that StarFox is going to be priced really, really well. If you buy the game digitally, it's only going to cost you $49.99, which freaking rocks and goes right along with what Nintendo said a couple months back. They said that they were going to start pricing their physical and digital games differently. And they also said that their first-party games, just in general, were going to be cheaper, which a lot of people have been pushing for. They said they were going to do it, and thus far, with this and Yoshi and the Mysterious Book, they've stuck to exactly that, and that really makes me happy. Nintendo games have historically been the relatively more budget-friendly option, and they stopped being that. They started being the exact opposite of that for a while. And with this kind of turnaround, I don't know if it was more to save face. I don't know what the reason is, but I'm happy about it, because these are two games that I absolutely would pay $50 for, that I would not pay $80 for. And not to stray too much off topic, but I think that people in general might need to relax at least a little bit with this unbridled hate toward every single thing that Nintendo does. Let me just say this. A lot of Nintendo's business practices have been horrendous, especially over the last, I'd say, 2 years or so. I'm not saying they've always been perfect, but over the last 2 years, they've been pretty bad. They made some pretty anti-consumer choices. I don't know where it stemmed from, but it happened. But there's this thing that happens, especially with larger corporations, where when a company does something that kind of, leaves a bad taste in people's mouths, it starts to get to a point where every single thing that that company does leaves that exact same bad taste in everyone's mouth. And unfortunately, we're in a period right now where that is going on with Nintendo. Being a Nintendo fan in 2026 is like being like a regular German citizen in Nazi Germany during World War II. When you tell someone that you're a Nintendo fan, they just assume that you support all of these negative things that Nintendo does and sometimes is still doing, when in reality, we just like playing Nintendo games, man, and I'm just not going to be blinded, regardless of whether it's Nintendo or any company. I'm not going to be blinded and judge every single decision that a company makes based on a couple bad decisions that they make, in the same way that I wouldn't judge a person for making 1 or 2 bad decisions, even if it did negatively affect me. I'm not going to then judge that person permanently with every single thing that they do based on a couple bad decisions. Especially if, in this case, like someone that I might know personally, Nintendo has left a pretty lasting impact in my life, and frankly, I'm just a little more forgiving than that. And also, who freaking cares, man? They make video games. If you don't like their products, don't buy their products. It's that simple. I just think everybody needs to relax at least a little bit. Yes, Nintendo has done a lot of anti-consumer things, especially over recent years. Does that mean that every single solitary thing that Nintendo does is anti-consumer? No. That is a very short-minded and dense thought that I think you can have about not just a company, but about really anything or any person. That's pretty much all I have to say about the StarFox situation on Switch 2. If you guys have any thoughts or opinions or anything, you want to leave them in the comments, go right ahead. I'd love to hear what you guys have to think. Outside of that, I'll catch you guys next time.